Hey everybody, my name's Justin Klumpner and I'm a painting teacher over at Rockwall High School, and today I'm going to talk to you guys about the broad range of approaches to portraiture artists have taken over the years. But before we do, I want you to take a moment and reflect on these two questions. Number one, what makes a work of art a portrait? And number two, what makes a good portrait? To talk about portraiture, let's start with the Mona Lisa. It's considered the most famous portrait in the world. It became an instant icon and gave Leonardo da Vinci a reputation as the greatest painter in Renaissance Florence. The subject's softly sculptural face shows da Vinci's skillful handling of sfumato, an artistic technique that uses subtle gradation of light and shadow to model form, and shows his understanding of the anatomy of the face and the skull beneath the skin. This delicately painted veil, the finely detailed hair, and the careful rendering of folded fabric reveal da Vinci's careful observations and inexhaustible patience. And although the sitter's steady gaze and restrained smile were not regarded as mysterious until the 19th century, viewers today can appreciate her ambiguous expression. Next, we have a portrait of Louis XIV, King of France, painted by Hyacinthe Rigaud. That's quite a name. The making of this painting was propaganda. Nothing in Louis XIV is understated. Every detail was intended to remind the viewer of the supremacy of the monarch and his divine authority. Louis's advancing age is illustrated by his lined face, slight jowls, and double chin, but the king was in very poor health at this time and probably looked nothing like this. So even though the paint is applied very realistically, can we really consider this painting realistic? Louis XIV's legs, which Rigaud has cleverly and prominently displayed, are rather well defined for an aging king. It's no coincidence that Louis is posed with his majestic robes lifted to show off those legs. Louis had been a ballet dancer in his youth and prided himself on his dancer's legs. The legs, while in contrast to his aged face, suggest a vital and vigorous man still in the prime of his power. Here, Louis is identifiable. Clearly, the portrait is of the king in the later years of his life, yet also idealized. His legs are well-toned and his hair is lustrous, like that of a much younger man. Now here's some of the many self-portraits by the Dutch post-impressionist painter Vincent van Gogh. His work had a far-reaching influence on 20th century art for its vivid colors and emotional impact. Van Gogh produced his self-portraits because he wanted to practice painting people. But he was too broke to hire models, so the artist chose the simplest solution and painted himself. Something of Van Gogh's personality can be found in each self-portrait. He described the last one he did in Paris as quite unkempt and sad. Something like, say, the face of death. That's how he felt at the time, mentally and physically exhausted. Vincent did not portray himself as a sick, broken man for the sake or effect of pity. He was convinced that painting would help him to heal. "I retain all good hope," he wrote to Theo. Although these portraits are stylized, they show us more about the psyche of Van Gogh than a photorealistic painting could. Now let's take a look at Matisse and Picasso. The portraits of Henri Matisse were once described as taking the first step into the undiscovered land of the ugly. And Picasso's work was once described as the work of a madman. It's pretty funny that their paintings sell for over $100 million today. Matisse and Picasso worked to bring in decorative elements of line and color into their portraits. They were inspired by the work of African mask makers. This was intended to merge painting with decorative arts and to make painting more relevant to the newly emerging middle-class Parisians that had lots of disposable income. And he wanted paintings to fit into their homes that addressed subjects they liked, and they embraced new ideas rather than following the more conservative guidelines of academic art. Jean-Michel Basquiat was an American painter known for his highly expressionistic work that mixed graffiti and signs with the gestural and intuitive approaches of abstract expressionist painting. Although much of his work addressed his personal angst in highly stylized self-portraits, he also alluded to African-American historical figures, including jazz musicians, sports personalities, and writers. He appropriated freely and mixed motifs from Africa, the Caribbean, the Aztec Empire, and Hispanic cultures, and mixed high art references with images from popular culture, especially cartoons. Basquiat's art focused on dichotomies such as wealth versus poverty, integration versus segregation, and inner versus outer experience, and he used social commentary in his paintings as a springboard to deeper truths about the individual. Robert Rauschenberg is a native Texan from Port Arthur. From 1954 to 1964, Rauschenberg created works that blended sculpture, painting, and found objects, now referred to as the Combines. In this work, Monogram, he created a metaphoric exaggeration of his identity as seen by the McCarthyist voices of 1950s America. Rauschenberg purchased a stuffed Angora goat and placed it on a hinged platform decorated with fragments from wooden signs, bits of newspaper text, and expressive paint marks. The goat, whose snout is covered with multicolored war paint, is standing on a painting as if grazing at a pasture, a sort of gargoyle guarding over and destroying art. In early Christian art, goats symbolize the damned. A dingy tennis ball behind the animal suggests it is pooped on the painting. This is exactly how some Americans viewed Rauschenberg at the time as a bisexual artist. They considered him a demon, destroying art. Now he's viewed as one of American history's most significant artists. In this self-portrait by Mark Quinn, he makes what might be considered the most realistic portrait we've seen so far. In this work, Quinn regularly makes a cast of his own head, fills it with 10 pints of his own blood, and freezes it. These are displayed in refrigerated pedestals. It is a portrait of himself, made from part of himself. Here you can see 2 of the versions and the refrigerated pedestal he uses to house it. For the work Lick and Lather, Janine Antoni made a mold directly from her body, then cast herself 7 times in chocolate and 7 times in soap. She then reshaped her image by licking the chocolate and washing with the soap. The ancient Greeks believed that a perfectly proportioned body was 7 heads high. By licking and washing the heads, Antoni questions these assumptions of classical beauty. By using everyday materials, she triggers the viewer's memory of these basic rituals, forming an empathetic relationship to her process. Because the viewer can imagine her intimate contact with the object in making it, they can reconstruct the process in their minds. As far back as the Romans, the classical bust has adorned our homes. In this work, Antoni has created busts from materials found in the home, thus describing herself through the activities that happen in this private place. Felix Gonzalez Torres' work is often characterized by a sense of quiet reflection. He possesses an uncanny ability to produce elegant and restrained sculptural forms out of common materials. Many of his works address the AIDS epidemic and lay that on the table for discussion and contemplation. Gonzalez Torres created Untitled in 1991, around the time Ross, his boyfriend, died from AIDS. The work consists of commercially available, shiny, wrapped candy. The physical form of the work changes depending on the way it is installed. The ideal weight of the work, 175 pounds, corresponds to the average body weight of an adult male. The work makes us remember and symbolically connect to people who were often ignored or disowned during the AIDS epidemic that killed nearly 500,000 Americans. Gonzalez Torres himself died of AIDS-related complications in 1996. Byron Kim's work, Synecdoche, is made up of a series of small portraits where each individual person pictured is reduced to and represented by skin color alone. The title of Kim's work refers to a figure of speech in which a term for a part of something refers to the whole of something, or vice versa, as in saying all hands on deck to refer to a group of sailors. In highlighting the uniqueness and individuality of every skin tone, this painting provokes us to reconsider the ways in which skin color has been used to stereotype or otherwise marginalize individuals. In this way, Synecdoche is a unique work that asks us to reflect on the complexity of the visual markers of identity and how it affects our society. Sophie Calais' Take Care of Yourself is a body of work created for the French pavilion of the 2007 Venice Biennale. Calais herself describes the work. I received an email telling me it was over. I didn't know how to respond. It was almost as if it hadn't been meant for me. It ended with the words, "Take care of yourself." And so I did. I asked 107 women, including 2 made from wood and 1 with feathers, chosen for their profession or skills, to interpret this letter, to analyze it, comment on it, dance it, sing it, dissect it, exhaust it, understand it for me, answer for me. It was a way of taking the time to break up, a way of taking care of myself. In this work, Sophie Calais creates an installation of women's interpretations and assessments of a breakup letter she received in an email. examining the conditions and possibilities of human emotions. Take Care of Yourself opens up ideas about love and heartache, gender and intimacy, labor and identity. Calais takes heartache, something that we usually deal with privately, and makes it a communal experience. And here, we are again looking at a portrait by Robert Rauschenberg. He was invited to participate in a portrait exhibition, and at the time, forgot to make a portrait as promised. At the last minute, he sent a telegram stating, "This is a portrait of Iris Clert if I say so," for inclusion into the show. Rauschenberg's purely conceptual contribution destabilizes all conventions of traditional portraiture. While Rauschenberg's absurd gesture follows in the neo-Dadaist spirit of the time, it simultaneously predicts the trend towards emphasizing the conceptual in art that would become prominent in the art world later in the decade. All of the work I have presented you with today stretches what portraiture was considered to be at the time of its creation and makes us reevaluate what we believe a portrait can be. Take a moment. Think about everything we looked at. What was the most surprising to you? Was there anything you found frustrating? Was there anything you found ridiculous? Was there anything you found intriguing? And lastly, did anything change in your opinion about what makes a work of art a portrait? Did anything change in your opinion about what makes a work of art a good portrait? Those are just some things I want you to consider. Head over to Canvas and check out what we have for you to do today, alright? See you later.